My name is Mutunjire from Mbarara High School, and with me here is Musinguzi Karen, Awira Arnold, and Hali Blessing Tugume.
Shall be debating from Mbarara High School in the affirmative position against Ibanda Secondary School on the resolution this House attributes the rise in tax evasion in Uganda to the burden of high taxes that exist in Uganda. We expect a very good round and expect to get an obvious win. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kule Chris Kasoro from Ibanda SS St. John Fisher, and with me are my teammates Mukamajin Chris Nwagaba Roderick and Arinda Blair, and we are here for our first round with the resolution this House attributes the rise in tax evasion in Uganda to the burden of higher taxes, and we are versing the House School Mbarara High School.
We are debating in opposition, and we expect to debate and provide very quality arguments. It can even come to help in policy implementation and improving our country, Uganda. Thank you so much.
House rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. The first and last minutes are protected. The judge will ring a bell to signal the protected time. The bell will ring continuously after 5 minutes.
This House attributes the rise in tax evasion in Uganda to the burden of high taxes. 1. On definition, tax evasion is the illegal practice where a person or an entity intentionally does not pay due taxes. This definition is from Wikipedia. This directly means that individuals then try to dodge some sort of taxes, and in ways that include failing to file income tax returns, secondly, maintaining fake financial statements, and thirdly, not paying taxes at all. But first of all, on status quo or just context, understand that the resolution already gives us the parameters, which is Uganda. On that ground, we then realize that business in Uganda already exists to make profit, and that means this sort of profit then gives them funds to run the budget of activities, to then run the business in itself, right? Understanding this context, it then shows you that individuals in business then run with an aim of like getting this sort of income or profits to then run their activities. But then what happens? The sort of tax revenue or the sort of high taxes that are imposed on these sort of individuals then infringes on the sort of budget that they have to run their activities. What does this mean? This means individuals then push themselves to then maximize profits, and that's what individuals then lead to things like tax evasion. They fail to pay taxes and they end up, dodging taxes and things like that, because individuals are trying to get profit because that's the aim of their business, right? But then furthermore, we think tax revenue is aimed at getting individuals social services, right? But if these particular individuals are not finding this sort of incentive to then find, this sort of tax revenue to be paid, they won't pay these taxes, right? That's why I give you, in Uganda particularly, individuals then, come up and be like, taxes should be imposed on these particular entities or things like that. But then what happens? These individuals already know that this money goes into government and is then spent by those officials in things like corruption. That's why individuals still continue to dodge these taxes, because the way the money is spent is not giving individuals social services, but most of it is spent on things like individuals getting their own income. That's why individuals end up dodging. But then furthermore, we think that on the idea of taxation, we think that taxation is only good if individuals have justification for why they should pay. Maybe the government should then come up and tell individuals that, this sort of high taxation is there because there's an epidemic in the country, or maybe there is a war in the country and there's a necessity for us to get these sort of funds. But what happens in Uganda is that whenever individuals feel like they're not getting enough salary, that is to say individuals in government, whenever they feel like the characterization of them is that they are not getting enough services, they're not getting enough money, then they start imposing high taxes on the private sector particularly. What this then means is that individuals continue to evade these taxes because they know even when they pay these taxes are then used by government officials rather than them getting them and using them for social services. We think that's very detrimental because it will continue to increase, to continue to increase the low income earning of the government on its own. We then think that these high taxes on themselves being imposed on individuals who don't have enough to give, who have budgets to run, means that individuals will continue to dodge them because they're trying to get profits for themselves, they're trying to get money for themselves. If this sort of income is then not achieved, then these individuals will continue to dodge these taxes. I mean, there's so many taxes that are imposed on individuals, for example, VAT and things like that. Individuals will continue to dodge these taxes as long as they feel like their sort of budgets are being infringed on. On those grounds, I think that individuals are much more than justified to then continue dodging these taxes because government is still using their sort of income to then fulfill their own needs. On those grounds, I think there is no need as to why individuals then continue to pay taxes because individuals just look at it as money to the government, not money to again get us services. On those grounds, individuals will continue to dodge, individuals will continue to evade and make fake statements.
Panel, what we get from team proposition is something different from what they're supposed to deliver at the House. In a resolution, this House attributes the rise in tax evasion to the burden of high taxes. Government has a burden of proving to us and showing us that we feel like the rise in tax evasion in a country like Uganda is existing because we have high taxes in this country. What then the burden of team opposition is to come and show and prove team proposition that we actually come to show them that we feel like tax evasion is not necessarily caused by the sorts of high taxes in a country like Uganda, but then also show to them that this is then the reason as to why we have this sort of rise in tax evasion in the society. At a time when first prop speaker comes and says they feel like people don't pay taxes because they know it, that even when they pay taxes, this money is going to be used by this sort of government in actually meeting their own budgets in a country. This inherently means that the problem is not with the tax these people have. The problem happens with the sort of the way these people are going to use money. Inherently meaning that even when we have low taxes in a country, maybe let's say we are actually paying low taxes, but when we have no accountability for these sorts of taxes, these people will still do what? Will still invade. This actually takes them away from their own burden of proving to us that and showing to us that yeah, we have tax evasion, the rise in tax evasion exists because we have these sorts of high taxes in a country like Uganda. Now, let's first look at a country like Uganda in its society. Uganda, in and of itself, it's a democratic country that has a sort of parliament, and we believe that anytime that laws come in a country like Uganda, these are passed through parliament. And within the parliament, we have MPs who represent the people in this regard. This inherently means that at any time we pass a tax or we pass a law, people already know that this is the sort of law that is existing in the country. And then we feel like in a time where they feel like these people are not going to meet these standards, these have already been actually considered by their own what sorts of MPs and representatives in this regard. Then two, on the idea of social contract, we believe that when people decide to vote for a government and vote for a president or any leader, this means that they trust these people. So these people have a contract between them, and this contract actually gives the people the obligation to pay taxes in this regard. So what does the obligation that come to government look like? Government is supposed to provide services in this regard. We understand the fact that at a time when people actually come to pay their own taxes and meet their own obligation, that means that the only thing that is left is actually government meeting its own obligation of providing taxes. But in an event where government fails to provide these sorts of services in this regard out of these taxes, this means that people will actually invade. Because from what they say people are already informed about the sorts of taxes and the relevancy of taxes. This inherently means that even when people decide to invade these sorts of taxes, they already know that they're supposed to do these things and in this regard. Actually, Pano, and then on the idea of then what Uganda looks like. In a country like Uganda, they understand we have high taxes in this regard. But then we don't feel like the real diversity of taxes is to fund other people's extravagant budgets, is to fund other people's unnecessary parties in this country. So in an event where people lack the sort of accountability for the taxes they pay, this inherently means that they won't be able to comply in this regard. Pano, let's have an evidence. Let's have an example. We actually saw in 2023 when James Fire Sentongo launched the Kampala pothole exhibition. This was meant to show the number of potholes that existed in the roads of Kampala. This inherently means that people were not satisfied by the sorts of the services they were receiving within their own country. But let's also look at the Uganda parliamentary exhibition. This actually also took place on X. This already showed the sort of actually corruption that existed within our own parliament. But out of whatever government was supposed to do, the executive just said these are rumors that run on social media, and they don't need consideration in this regard. And we feel like at this point, people were asking for accountability, and they were expressing their own sort of dissatisfaction by the sort of tax system and the services that existed within our own country. Pano, let's also first look. Then comparative. We believe that even when people actually comply and pay these taxes, these high taxes, and there is no sort of accountability, still they lose in that regard. Iris.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.